ago, called me and asked me if I'd do a presentation on basic antennas. And like a dummy, I said yes. So this whole thing is an experiment. For one thing, it's been a few years since I've used anything like PowerPoint or anything like that. So that was a learning curve. I'm doing it on a Linux computer, which I don't know Linux, so that's a learning curve. I'm on the cheapest computer that I could scrounge up.
And that's your backyard?
Not hardly. You will see my backyard here shortly. But anyway, so the request was basic antennas with I guess a main point of probably for a new technician. So I am starting very, very basic. I don't know how long this will take. I'm a ham radio operator, so I talk a lot. We'll just find out.
Hey, Robert, I got a question before you go any further.
No. That is a stock picture that I found on the internet and said, hey, looks good to me. Okay, so let's kick this thing off. An antenna, what is an antenna? Okay, plain and simple. An antenna is a wire or metal construct designed to receive and or transmit radio waves. Yeah. Sounds like a good plan to me. It can be very basic or very complex in design, just like anything else in this world. It can be very basic or through the roof. It can be designed to receive, transmit in all directions, or only in one direction. Well, there's advantages and disadvantages. It can be either vertical or horizontally polarized. Some antennas can work as both. Sort of. Okay, first question. What do I mean when I say vertically and horizontally polarized? Okay, you got it. Vertical's up and down, horizontal side to side. The waves off of an antenna goes that direction. If you've got a vertical antenna, it's vertically polarized, so the waves are going this way. If you've got a horizontal antenna, something like not an infrared half wave, but like a dipole antenna, that is horizontally polarized. Your waves are going this way. There's pros and cons to both.
Well, you said not infrared.
Well, an infrared can be either, can kind of work as both. Yeah, that's why that last statement, sort of. It works. It's kind of a vertically polarized, horizontally polarized antenna. It doesn't know what it is. Okay. If you're a new ham, you probably started out with that. The antenna is that black part. We call it a rubber ducky. They work, sort of. It's short range. First thing you'll do is change it out. Okay. Right there is what you change it out to. Now, these are just pictures I got off the internet so far. Although that is my antenna, the Diamond SRH77CA, or similar, there is I don't know how many different versions of this exact same antenna by different companies. It is a good flexible antenna. You can almost tie that dude in a knot, and everything works great. It will improve your transmit and receive a lot over the rubber ducky antenna. Okay, so you're using that for a while. Then you go to, that's not a very good picture, but that is a mag mount antenna on my back porch. You can put that on your HT. Might require an adapter for the cable. That will improve your signal, transmit and receive, even more over the other antenna. It's a longer antenna. Chances are you'll have a better, matter of fact, that cable makes a wonderful ground plane today. So You're starting to see some of my equipment.
It didn't work on plastic table.
No, it doesn't. Not very well. Or on fiberglass trailers either. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, you could put it on a cookie sheet on plastic table.
A pizza pan works great too. Yeah. All right. Maybe your first DIY project. Okay. You got into amateur radio for a reason. Some for different reasons. But one of the things you'll probably want to do is build something. Well, usually the first thing you'll build will be a J-pole antenna. There's mine. Now, not the one on the left. The one there in the center. That is a J-pole antenna. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 17 or 18 years old. It's moved from the location that we were at, and it's been hanging on the side of my shop for the last 7 or 8 years. That antenna is almost bulletproof. I've done nothing to it. If you hear me on the net, that's the antenna I'm talking to you on. Works great in Republic. Gets to Springfield with no problem. I can talk to Branson. Do have an advantage. My radio is capable of 100 watts, but I very seldom if ever run it anywhere close to that. It's just a good basic antenna. A little bit better view or thought process. There it is. That gives you the basic design of a J-pole. What is it made out of? Well, this one here says 3/4 inch copper pipe. Mine's 1/2 inch copper pipe. I'm cheap. When I built the first J-pole, I built it for about $15. You can't even buy the pipe for $15 now. But just one stick of 1/2 inch copper pipe, you'll end up with an antenna that will last you probably as long as you want to use it. Internet sites for J-pole information. So the top one will show you how to build it. Well, basically both of those will show you how to build it, give you the instructions. One of them will even give you a formula or a calculator that will, if you're using 1/2 inch, it will tell you what the distances are and, you know, how long the pipes need to be, how far up the little copper coax needs to be on it. Now, I will tell you, when I built this thing, I had issues with it. Now, the issues were all me. But it looks to me like you're just putting it dead short on your antenna lead. Well, you are, but you're not running DC power. So, it makes up for that. But if you do anything with power at all, you take one look at that antenna and says, that's going to blow my radio up the first time I key it. From the ground side of your coax to the hot side of your coax, there's about 4 inches of copper pipe in there. It looks like it's going to blow it up. Take my word for it. It doesn't. It works. Radiates quite well. Okay. You've built your first J-pole antenna. You're having fun. Then somebody, probably by the name of Sean, you hear on a repeater, we're going to have a fox hunt. It's going to be, I don't know, some Saturday. Well, what's a fox hunt? Well, that's where somebody that has a superiority complex goes out and hides a radio that every so often, at a certain interval, will send out a tone or call sign or something that you can hear, and your job is to find out where he hit it. How do you do that? Project number 2. What is that made out of? That is a directional antenna for VHF, UHF, mostly for VHF. Those yellow things, that's a tape measure that I've cut up. So what's your advantage of that? Well, you can fold that antenna up quite small. And wouldn't recommend transmitting on that. Probably wouldn't work very well. It might damage your radio.
Actually, the people there.
Well, I haven't tried it on this one, so that's
It's called for every up. Actually, very good.
well, I mean, it's an antenna designed to transmit and receive in a certain direction. What you do is you take that antenna, you hang on to the end of it, you try to find your strongest signal. Oh, signal's over there somewhere. You go that direction and try to keep doing that every time the thing transmits until you find the hidden transmitter. I've been on exactly one fox hunt. Had a blast doing it. Haven't had the time or the availability to go on the ones any that Sean's put out. Eventually I will. But right now, the kids being in from Texas and everything's crazy at the house. Hey, it's even a miracle I'm here tonight.
All right. How far from the Trent Canyon will that pick up? You have to be from it.
Well, it depends on the fox, for one thing. The fox hunt that I was on, they had 2 or 3 probably half-watt transmitters, which aren't very powerful. I mean, they were just little itty-bitty things. But you could pick it up with that. Of course, I made this after that, of course, because at that time I didn't know what I was doing. I rode with somebody. But yeah, it's just, a lot of it's going to depend on the fox, how far away it is. You can have short distance foxes, maybe in a couple of 3-block area. Like they've had one at Nathaniel Green Park. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, if you're doing like a high powered, whatever high powered means, and if you're doing a driving, well, obviously you have to take your car, go somewhere. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, it's still that direction. It's nice to have a map. Okay, it's that way. And you know, fox hunting. I have much nicer ones than this, but this is just one that I built. But yeah, this is good for that. I also built an attenuator box so that when you start getting close, you can throw in attenuation so you're still looking for a signal peak. When you get real close, you take your antenna off and point towards it. You're doing all this with an HT and an antenna. That's the equipment you have to have, and everything else is just what you want. Okay, math time. Everybody loves math, right? I don't.
Talk to
There's
our
a basic
students.
formula for determining an HF antenna. Well, basically any antenna, but up to 30 megahertz, I think is what it says, or something like that, yeah. Okay, I did the easy way. At bottom line, that's a calculator. You just throw in the numbers, the frequency you want, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about making yourself an antenna. What type of antenna? That. Half-wave dipole. That is as basic for HF that you can get, I think. I don't know of anything more basic than that. It's a wire cut to a certain length with a wire feeding it, coax, if you have a balun, or ladder line if you don't, and you'll go balance. Throw it up in the air. Probably want to, if you want to get out long distance, you need to be at least 30 feet up, I would say. But, hey, there's something called a nimbus antenna. If you want to get to the state next door, mount it about 5 feet off the ground, and you'll get to the state next door. But that right there is as basic as you get, and that is for HF frequencies. Told you this is going to be basic, because I ain't smart enough for anything over that. Okay. My favorite, a vertical. Why do I like verticals? Okay, you don't need a lot of space to put one up. Low takeoff angle. What do I mean by that? Antennas, whenever you transmit, they take off. Okay? A vertical takes off at a lower angle. It's great for skip. Whereas a wire antenna maybe takes off at a higher angle. Don't get too far, don't get too deep on that one. No fancy mounting needed. You can stick that dude in the ground, there you are. They work. They do. And I think they look good. I like the looks of a vertical. Case in point. There's my vertical antenna in my backyard. Ignore the burned up tomato patch. That is a fairly simple antenna. That is it's supposed to be a 4BTV. I've changed it to a 5. That one does 10, 15, 17, 20, and 40 meters. Been thinking about getting the 80 meter part to it. Yeah.
For wire upgrade, I have 50 at 80, it's so narrow, no video.
Well, as long as you can tune it to digital modes.
Well, you could, depending on how you do it.
Yeah. But see, that's where I would operate, would be in the 80 meters, would be in the digital mode range. So if I can get tuned to that, but I haven't pulled the trigger on it. But that antenna is what they call a trap antenna. I have made a bunch of contacts on that antenna. It's a good, solid antenna. The pole that it's mounted to in the very bottom is put in concrete about 30 inches down because I couldn't dig the hole any deeper because I got rock and clay. That's all part of it. But so far, trees have been blown over, literally, right next to it. That dirt you see there behind my tomato patch, that's where a tree was blown over in the last storm. And yeah, my antenna is still there.
Is there a radio requirement for that?
I do have radios up on there. I've got 4 radios for 10, 15, 17, and 20. 2 radios for 40. And the reason I've only got 2 radios for 40 because they're on. So, but you don't even have to have the radios. The antenna says you should. Yeah. Yeah. It will work without them. The instruction says to put them in there. Hey, I was already tearing things up, making this, and I figured this is going to be the last antenna I put up. So I wanted to do it as best I could. So I even got the little copper stuff to go on the joints, so it doesn't corrupt. So yeah, I've got a radio. And you lay it on the ground, you staple it down, and in 6 months you can't find those radios. They're in there, but you can't find them because they're gone. Grass, the grass just eats them. I don't know what it does to them, but they're gone. Okay.
I know customers recommend radio. I got my own, I get put that. I got it cheap. Very easy to grab a lot. I'm over 100 people live, don't use my mouth, off and down. 100 people live. So it is kind of good.
I had when we first started, I put a vertical antenna without any radials. It was an MFJ 19 something or another, I don't remember exactly. The antenna was built upside down. The feed point was at the top. And, that antenna did a pretty good job. Eventually the wind did get to it. But, so, yeah, the book says you need radials. Like Dave says, you can get by without radials. It may do better with radials, but I'm not sure how much. I've got radios simply because I had stuff to do it and decided to do it. Yeah.
If you explain, some of the folks what, the radios do, and compared to like a mag mount on,
The radials are the second half of your antenna. What is a vertical antenna? A vertical antenna is a dipole that is straight up and down. Well, but you only got half of it up here. Radials are wires that you spread out, lay on the ground, and that becomes the second half of that dipole. Now, is that clear as mud?
Hooks to the shield on your coax.
Yes, it hooks to the shield of the coax.
Vertical is just that dipole on the radio.
Yeah.
Well, basically, it's your ground man. I don't know how you call it.
Yeah.
The radio is basically your ground man.
It's the reflecting part. That's why if you don't have radios, you actually have ground there. If you've got decent dirt, well, yeah, I know what you mean.
This is the Ozarks.
If you've got dirt rather than rock, that works. Because that can be part of it. You just have to, the shield part of the antenna needs to be shoved into the ground. Okay, that's the connection to Earth. So that's how come you can get, in some instances it won't work, because if you're on top of a rock, well, that's not a very good conducting surface. Dirt, however, conducts fairly well. That's why it works without radials. Radials are better because A, they're tuned, supposedly, to the frequencies that you want. That's why I have so many radios. I've got 4 radios for 10 meters. They're short. They're 6, 8 feet, something like that, I don't remember. Then I got the 15s, the 17s, and the 20s. I got 4 each of those. But I only had enough room really to put 2 40s out there. Dave?
You said that it's split up the newspaper, you have a guide?
I could hear you.
You have that guide, or is it newspaper?
It's freestanding.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm impressed the next year, I watched mine, and 40 mile, just pick it up, and go lay it down.
I do not have that on a tilt base. I thought about that, but I haven't done that yet. But I mean, it swings, but it's never looked like it's even offered to fold up. So far, so good. All right. Everyone's dream antenna. Well, maybe. This is a HF directional, commonly known as a beam antenna. Advantages for a beam antenna. A beam antenna is directional, receive and transmit. You have a higher gain than other antennas. If you're only listening to a certain spot, you're going to hear that certain spot better, because it's going to, I don't like to use this word, it's going to amplify the signal coming from that certain spot. Rejects unwanted noise from the sides. You've got noisy neighbors, and if you're pointing that way and they're that way, you're not going to hardly hear them. They're going to have to be really loud for you to hear them, because it's going to reject it. It's not looking towards it. Some can work as a vertical or a horizontal polarized antenna. Case in point. That one right there, well, we'll get back
Quad.
if I can figure out how to do it.
Just back arrow. There we go.
That's elements going up and down, and elements going side to side. There's probably 2 coax feeds to that antenna. Now you can put them into a device that combines them, and it works both ways, but anyway. If there's 2 coax feeds, you can switch. You want vertically, you want horizontal. Depends on what you're trying to do, which one works best. If you're on our 10-meter net, Well, you want vertically polarized, because almost all of us are using vertical antennas. If you have a wire antenna and it's horizontally polarized, will it work? Yeah, not so well, but we may still hear you, and you may still be able to hear us. But I'll guarantee you, you put a vertical up in exactly the same spot as your horizontal, you're going to do better, because we're doing the same thing, this way rather than this way.
About a 20 dB difference between horizontal to a vertical.
I wasn't sure of that, and I didn't go that deep.
If they're mismatched.
If they're mismatched, yeah. If you're transmitting from a vertical to a horizontal, then you're going to lose that.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of difference. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
What did you lost?
Okay,
Yep,
this is a
20 dB.
Well, cost. They cost more. And the reason it costs more is because you got to have a whole lot more structure to use them. A tower, a rotor. Not everything has a tower, but most common will be a tower, a rotor, and a beam on top of that. Takes more effort to install and use. If you got a rotor, you got to know what you're trying to listen to and point it that direction. For larger antennas, you need to think about wind load and ice load. I don't remember the guy's name, but he lives on 174. That guy's got an antenna farm most of us would drool over. Whenever I was still working at AT&T, I used to have to go that road a lot. Right after an ice storm, I almost cried when I drove by his house. All of his antennas were doing this number. That's not how they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be this number, not this number. I don't know what he had to actually spin to get his antennas back up in the air, looking right, but I'm sure he had to spend some money on that. But hey, that's the price you pay if you want directional. Like I say, there's advantages and disadvantages. I saw this picture and I thought that was rather interesting. If you go to W1AW up in Connecticut, I think where they're at. That is where the ARRL has their radios. That is a picture of their antenna farm. Looks like you could have a lot of fun with that.
Oh, yeah.
And okay, that may be overkill. A lot of antennas there of various sizes, designs, and uses. But I thought that was another neat antenna farm. Now, I want you to notice the one not right in the center, but to the left of that. You'll see double stacked directional antennas. What do I mean by double stacked? Well, there's antennas on top of antennas on the same rotor next to the exact same thing on the other side of the tower. What do you do there? Well, you multiply your gain again. If you get all those antennas, now, this is a little bit more than basic, but they're supposed to be a certain distance apart, and there's a math point to fill out for that. Put them a certain distance apart, both vertically and horizontally. The coaxes all have to be the same length. You probably will feed it into a duplexer or something like that, so you only have one going to your radio. But you have to have everything just right. But when you have it just right, if you get 6 dB gain off of one, well, you're not going to get 12 off of two, but you might get 9. And here he's got 4. So there's a bunch of money sitting there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, things to think about. What band or bands do you want to use? You want to build your antenna? You want to buy them? How much area do you have for antennas? It's important. You can't buy an antenna bigger than the area you've got to use. How much money do you want or have to spend?
very important.
Yeah, that comes into play, believe it or not.
How much is the wife willing to put?
All right, questions, keep it simple. Yeah.
Hey, Johnny, you had a question for me the other day.
I was talking a little bit about.
You did?
Yeah.
Internet.
Yeah.
Now, are there more varieties of antennas? Yes, but they're all going to be a variation of what I just showed you. So, like a dipole, we were talking about an NVED halfway. It's a modified dipole. It's just, basically your antenna is going to be vertical, horizontal, only directional, transmits every way, or directional. That's pretty much your antennas. All right.
Where's a Yagi fit in all that?
That's
Yagi
the beam.
antenna.
Basically, it was the beam.
That was the directional one. That's a directional, just like.
Yeah.
Yagi's direction, whether it's a handheld, box hunt, or multi-element that has a rotor, that's a Yagi. Pointing directional motion. It's just a multi-directional.
There's a whole bunch of Yagis on that. Yes, back.
Okay. See, all those are just. No, those are all normally outside. Well, I don't know.
That one?
There's the top USB, I guess.
Yeah.
That's actually more impressive if you're not looking at it from the top.
Yeah.
More pictures of it, but
Yeah.
yeah. Somewhere where you get there,
And that area is not that big of an area. It may be a couple of acres that he's got there, or that they've got there. But there's a lot of antennas in that acre.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully, this kind of gives you some idea where to start if you didn't know where to start. If you got questions, everybody does. Well, there's a lot of people here that know more about antennas than I do. I actually just spent some time on the internet getting pictures, taking pictures of my backyard, and stuff like that. I was talking to somebody, I already forgot who, that was interested in 10 meters. Okay, 10 meters there on the left. The top of it's chopped off, but that's my 10-meter vertical. It works pretty well. I've made a lot of contacts on 10 meters with that. And the nice thing about it, there's no ground plane on that one. That's just stuck up on a pole on top of my shop. So it's about 15, 20 feet off the top of the ground.
So, the ground plane or radio?
No ground plane or radio. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Does the coax cable length have anything to do other than just getting your radio to your antenna? Does that affect your?
Yes and no.
Yes, and some, and yes, it does.
If you have a G5RB or whatever they call that, it does, that's part of your antenna.
The
The
coax.
coax.
Part of your antenna.
Yeah.
That thing I picture I'm showing you, that's all that.
Well, basically, that is a multi-band dipole antenna. So it's like that picture that had the thing in the center, the wire going down.
Yeah.
It's just a shortened dipole antenna. They're using the feed line as part of the antenna rather than, so in other words, you don't have to maybe get it 30, 32 feet, something like that. You can get a little lower on the ground. Part of your radiating line is your coax. The problem with that is that also radiates quite well in your shaft. If you don't put a Ballon or something to cut it. Yeah. A choke. In other words, you want to block the signal from getting into your shaft. On my vertical antenna, I ground the shield before it gets into the shot. And that pretty well takes care of most of it. That's all I got, folks.